Alright, today we're going to be talking about the future of Windows 12. For a long time we assumed that as long as our computer worked well we could use it without worry, but everything we're seeing about upcoming Windows versions indicates this era is coming to an end. Each new leak and announcement suggests many devices will be left behind, even relatively recent models. Most concerning is we're not talking about old machines, but devices many still use daily for study, work or gaming. Whether our PC stays usable no longer depends just on performance, but on the type of hardware it has. We saw this when Windows 11 excluded capable processors, and now it's happening again with Windows 12 or its equivalent, Windows 11 26H1. All signs indicate that the system will prioritize very specific components with functions mainly related to artificial intelligence and security presented as essential. Graphics cards are a clear example. While many still offer excellent performance in games or demanding tasks, they would be sidelined for not including dedicated units for AI processing. Common models like the RX 6600 and 6650 XT, as well as Intel's entry-level GPUs, such as the A380 or A580, lack this acceleration capability. The same applies to entire NVIDIA series, like GTX or GT, which still perform very well but would be deemed insufficient for not integrating these specialized cores. The consequence would be that even though they continue to function perfectly on a technical level, the system would treat them as if they were outdated technology. This pattern repeats in processor leaks, where the leaks suggest Windows will only favor CPUs with integrated NPUs. This would effectively exclude almost the entire AM 4-socket ecosystem and popular models like the Ryzen 5 3600 or 5600. Intel faces a similar situation where any CPU before the LGA 1700 socket would receive less support and might lose direct compatibility. This includes processors recently considered high-end like the i7 or i9 models. Together, this creates a scenario where millions of users would face progressive limitations, updates that fail to install, missing features, or installers that block installations citing incompatibility. Situations like this have happened before, for example, when support for traditional BIOS was abandoned, or the transition to SSDs was forced with the promise of better experience, though often the real goal was simply to drive new sales. This idea keeps appearing in discussions and leaks, supported by the precedent of software that once sold as a one-time purchase now requires ongoing subscription payments. If implemented, we could end up in a situation where we couldn't use our own system without paying a regular fee, even though we already own the hardware. The combination of locked hardware and mandatory subscription payments would turn any PC into a limited device, where actual computing power becomes secondary to the requirements imposed by the operating system. This scenario forces us to choose between two paths: staying on older Windows versions, knowing they'll be less protected and more vulnerable, or considering different operating systems. Alternatives like Linux allow using computers of any age without activation restrictions or arbitrary compatibility issues. Its distributions can be adjusted for different uses, from basic tasks to editing and some games, all free and with complete user control. Technology's future seems to be moving more toward obligation than utility, and each step taken by the world's most used operating system reinforces this idea. That's why it's important to carefully analyze these decisions and consider which path we want to take as users, especially when many computers we use in our region work perfectly and could still serve for many more years. So anyway, tell me what you think about this Windows 12 version, which obviously isn't confirmed yet, but rumors are already spreading about requiring compatible equipment with built-in AI in your computer, which will clearly limit access to it. Today we're going to talk about something very specific, the date Sam Altman has set for when artificial intelligence will surpass human intelligence. According to him and his team, March 2028 will be the point when AI can conduct complete research projects without human assistance. They present this not as a hunt, but as a roadmap backed by energy contracts, pre-ordered chips, and infrastructure currently being built. To understand why they're confident about such a precise date, we first need to examine what kind of systems they're developing. Their new reasoning model can think for hours or days before responding, instead of blurting out the first thing that comes to mind. It generates multiple possible solutions, tests them by eliminating failures, and refines the best one. It's like cloning a genius repeatedly and having all copies work together on the same problem, sharing breakthroughs instantly. This way of working opens the door to what they call recursive improvement. We can imagine a recipe passed between apprentice chefs, each one improving it slightly. The results they show are heading in that direction. Compared to previous models, this new approach has boosted performance in demanding tasks like math Olympiads and competitive programming, approaching top human students level. They estimate a model can now do several hours of human intellectual work, and this gap is rapidly widening. All this comes at a huge energy and hardware cost, with over 30 gigawatts of computing power committed, backed by major deals with chip manufacturers, data centers, and energy companies. And facilities are already underway with their midterm plan to build something like a gigawatt factory, capable of adding 1 gigawatt of capacity weekly if funding and demand align. With this foundation, they divide the roadmap into very clear phases. By September 2026, they expect to have AI research assistants at intern level, systems that accelerate human researchers' work, though still requiring oversight. And by March 2028, they aim for autonomous AI researchers capable of designing experiments, executing them, analyzing results, and proposing new hypotheses without direct human intervention. The key is they no longer see algorithms as the main limitation, but hardware, and hardware follows schedules, not wishes. And in their view, this technology's deepest impact won't just be economic, but scientific. They believe these systems can compress decades of progress into just a few years and describe data centers fully dedicated to single challenges like finding new antibiotics, designing advanced materials, developing cleaner energy, or discovering disease treatment. With sufficient computing power, they could explore combinations that would take human teams centuries to review. They acknowledge this isn't simply an extension of traditional computing, but a shift potentially leading to superintelligence, systems more capable than any human in many critical areas. That's why they focus heavily on safety and value alignment, what the AI prioritizes, how it follows instructions, whether it can gauge its uncertainty, how it resists manipulation, and what external safeguards protect the entire system. To sustain this plan, they're also reorganizing the human and institutional aspect, creating a large non-profit foundation that controls a public-purpose company, with the aim of allocating significant resources to AI projects they consider especially beneficial. Their initial objectives are to apply AI to combat diseases and build a new field of AI resilience, an ecosystem prepared to respond to risks like potential biological misuse, employment impacts, and mental health effects. And now we come to the big question everyone asks: how is this different from just another tech bubble? They argue that here the product already exists and works, that the committed funds aren't just speculative bets, but signed contracts to build chips, factories, and data centers, and that they're not alone. Other major labs share the belief that we can compress a century of scientific progress into just 1 or 2 decades, if their bet pays off. March 2028 would mark the beginning of an era where the cost of doing science would plummet while the creation of new knowledge explodes. If not, they'll have invested colossal sums trying to buy brute force computing power, something human ingenuity might not surrender so easily. So that's it. Tell me what you think about Sam Altman's statements regarding superintelligence coming in March 2028, and I'll see you in future videos. Alright, today we'll review from our collective perspective how the most complete details about Sam Altman's 2023 removal and the legal battle that followed came to light. It all started with Ilya Sutskever's sworn testimony, who spent nearly 10 hours answering questions in the case between Elon Musk and Sam Altman. That testimony revealed a 52-page internal document he had prepared, claiming the then CEO showed a pattern of deception and dividing executives against each other. During his testimony, he admitted he had been considering removing him from the position for over a year. He explained he was waiting for a scenario where the board majority would no longer naturally favor Altman. In this context, the memo took shape after Adam D'Angelo asked him for evidence supporting his concerns. Most of the material came from screenshots and information provided by Mira Murati, who was the chief technology officer at that time. Sutskever admitted he completely trusted what Murati told him, and didn't directly verify with other executives mentioned. He later acknowledged this lack of verification was a serious error, especially since the document supported the decision to remove the leader of one of the tech sector's most influential companies. To prevent Altman from discovering the report, he sent it using a self-destructing email system, fearing that if he learned about these conversations, he could make them disappear. Tension within the board had already built up, and according to Sutskever, in the preceding weeks, both he and Murati told the independent directors they didn't trust Altman and felt the internal environment was toxic. They explained that they didn't consider him suitable to guide the path toward AGI. Then came November 17, 2023, when the board removed Altman, claiming he wasn't completely honest in his communications. The internal reaction was immediate. Several key employees resigned, and over 700 signed a letter demanding his return and threatening to leave the company. Sutskever confessed that he didn't expect such a response. He thought staff would be neutral about the change, but pressure grew so much that he publicly expressed regret for supporting the decision. While all this was happening, the board held discussions that nearly erased Openai from existence. Less than 48 hours after the dismissal, a proposal to merge with Anthropic emerged, and Sutskever noted it wasn't clear who contacted whom, but conversations occurred with Anthropic founders Dario and Daniela Amadei. And according to him, Helen Toner was the most supportive member of that possibility, even when some executives had warned that the company wouldn't survive without Altman. Toner went so far as to argue that allowing OpenAI to collapse could align with her vision of safety. Well, all this fueled the dispute between Musk and Altman, which had been escalating for years. Musk argues that OpenAI strayed from its initial intentions as a non-profit organization and that shifting to a commercial model contradicts that mission. Altman, for his part, claims the company's transformation is necessary to fund future advances and that their split was painful but inevitable. The fight gained even more attention when Musk offered to buy OpenAI for over $97 billion, saying he wanted to return it to its roots. Altman rejected the proposal and responded publicly with irony. This exchange added to their history of accusations, with Musk calling him a fraud. Meanwhile, OpenAI completed restructuring, giving Microsoft a nearly 27% stake valued in the tens of billions. Despite this, the company rejects Musk's accusations and dismisses the lawsuit as groundless. What emerges from this episode is a story marked by distrust, poor communication, and hasty decisions within the organization. Tensions over OpenAI's leadership and AI's direction remain central to the Musk-Altman rivalry. While this conflict continues in court and public, the 2023 crisis reminds us how vulnerable even the world's most influential companies become when power, vision, and governance clash.